where it's over $6 a gallon right now.
Well, prices go up and you drive less, correct? That's what demand curves tell us.
Well, and that's 100% right. And I think it's funny. I heard somebody the other day. I think I saw it on social media. I thought Democrats liked when we drove less because it was better for the environment. You have a background as a member of the California State Energy Commission. I was explaining to people the other day. I have one of my cousins works in transportation, and about a decade ago, he started explaining to me about skinny roads, that they're environmentalists that would like to have us have skinnier roads, make it more difficult to drive, raise the gas prices to force us into public transportation. And that's been one of the goals all along of the Environmental Union.
Confusion, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Let's talk a little bit about OPEC. When I was in school, you taught me about the Seven Sisters that controlled the oil on the worldwide market and how they put together. Well, originally, it was a social group, OPEC, and during the late 60s and 70s, they figured out, wait a minute, we can actually control the flow of oil, and OPEC started controlling how much oil is produced, which means they can also leverage and control the price of oil and gasoline on the worldwide market. Can you give us a little thumbnail sketch of what that was?
What apparently happened was you had the Seven Sisters, which were the big oil companies.
Texaco, Exxon, Gulf, things like that, BP.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting. It was Texaco, which doesn't exist anymore, Shell, Gulf, which doesn't exist, British Petroleum, which does exist, and you had three Standard Oil companies, one of California, New Jersey, and New York, and they were controlling the price of oil on the world market. And a couple of the countries got together, Saudi Arabia and Iran and Iraq, Kuwait, I think Venezuela was part of it as well, and they said, look, this oil is on our land, it's our oil, we're going to take control. And so they were fighting with the Seven Sisters, if you will, the seven major oil companies, to take control. And they've had pretty much control over the years from about 1960, 1961 on. And there's been obviously occasional disruptions in the market. And now we have a big disruption in the market. And one of the current members of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, has decided, now, wait a minute, I think we can do better if we get out of here. Their quota was limited, and they can produce more than their quota, and at the high price of oil internationally, they want to take advantage of it. Now, what effect that will have is only at the margin, because I think they're around 3 billion barrels a day, and they can get up to maybe 5 billion barrels a day, but that's not a whole lot when you look at the world oil market. But it is a matter of independence and showing that maybe countries want to work for themselves now rather than letting a group decide how much they can produce and what they can earn.
My mentor, Dr. Richard Bilas, joining us here, economics professor extraordinaire, and one of the true classical economists, not a supply sider, not a Keynesian. He taught me ultimately in the end, we will have full employment as long as we stay out of everybody's way, which leads me to this about the cartel. It is, in a way, a monopoly. They can set their own prices. They can tell every one of their members, Saudi Arabia, you get to produce this much at this price. Iran, you're going to do this. Venezuela, you're going to do that. If you were able to have Venezuela independent, not obeying the lords of OPEC, you have the UAE going independent, not obeying the lords of OPEC. Does that change their dynamic thinking? Because now you're starting to see leakage. And if more people see, hey, wait a minute, Venezuela is making more money being on their own. UAE is certainly doing better being on their own. How does that scare the ministers of the OPEC oil ministers?
Well, think about the countries as individuals first. If the oil price is high and quotas are not what the countries think they can produce, they will all produce more to make more money, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what happens if more and more is being produced? The supply goes up and the price goes down. So from the standpoint of consumers of oil, products, gasoline and what have you, you and consumers like you and me, the more competition we have out in the oil market, the better off we're going to be in the long run. And breaking up of OPEC, if that's what UAE is trying to do, has to be in the long term a benefit for consumers of oil products, because they're going to be fighting with each other for market shares, just like a lot of other industries where you have competition. And competition, in my view, is good.
It's good for the consumer. It sets the price the way it ought to be. And again, if we were talking about this yesterday, Dr. Bilas, Dr. Richard Bilas, joining us right now at 7:41 here on News Radio WRVA. People are now self-rationing. I remember the rationing when I was a kid and the OPEC oil embargo, and we had rationing, and you had to could only get gas depending on whether you had an odd number at the end of your license plate. I remember people standing in lines, but we're actually seeing people self-ration right now because the price of gasoline has gone so high. And I'm not going to go down to the Keys. I'm not going to go on vacation. I'm not going to go take a drive. I'm going to think twice before I get in my car. That's the market setting itself.
Well, that's part of the market. Now, you have to extend this a little bit, because with the price of oil being high, transportation costs are up, which means many products that you buy are going to have higher prices. And so you're going to buy less. And so this can cause significant economic problems in many countries, which is why the more competition you have in the production of oil, the better off we all are going to be.
I remember you told me something in class, and it's always stuck with me. We were talking about the price of oil, and we were talking about the environmental lobby and how they said one day we're going to run out of oil. I'm not sure if you remember this. You told me in the rest of class, and I talked to you about it after class one day. You said we will never, ever, 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 ever run out of oil on this planet. And a bunch of kids like, no, we're running out of oil. You said no, because eventually it becomes so scarce, it'll be so expensive, nobody will be able to buy it, and they won't be able to buy that last drop because of the markets.
You got it. That's the way markets work.
Eventually, it'll become so expensive that the alternative will be something else. And that's where I was just going to ask you this real quick, and I take you down a little bit of a rabbit hole. As we look at EVs and all the rest of these, eventually oil can become so expensive that something else will replace it, electric cars, something else, but it'll be the market that'll dictate when that gets to be too much of a burden to burn oil, and these electric cars become efficient enough that they can replace the oil, the gasoline combustion engine.
Elected or appointed officials will not solve problems. Markets solve problems all the time if they are permitted to work.
And when you have places where they dictate that, then they're not. And I always think of this when I talk with people here on the radio or in person. And I always go back to what you say about the markets will dictate, because if those energy efficient cars, those EVs, those hybrids were so good, I wouldn't need a government official or a bureaucrat to force me into the car. I would go running to look for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. All right. Anything else you want to impart with us when it comes to the price of gasoline? Because I know you pointed out that these are shocks. And once we get the Strait of Hormuz open, you're going to see the price of oil. I'm saying this, the price of oil will fall back down, and it'll go back to what the market dictates.
Well, I just hope it happens sooner rather than later. Watching television and about the war and the ceasefire and the negotiations and this, that, and the other thing, the question still hangs around the Iranian production of nuclear weapons, and that's the real problem. And until that's solved, we're going to continue to have problems at the Strait of Hormuz.
Absolutely. Dr. Bilas, it's always a pleasure. Give my best to Amy and the family and your wife, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you much, my friend. God bless you. Take care.
God bless you. Dr. Richard Bilas. Okay. You guys want to know the big influences of my life? That man right there. That man right there took a 17-year-old freshman under his wing who had no idea what he was going to do. I used to laugh. I used to tell people, what's your major? Pre-game show host. Here I am. I'm a talk show host, so I guess I was right. But Dr. Richard Bilas, a true mentor of mine, and I'm just so grateful that I get to have him join us here on the radio. All right, today's program brought to you in part by Loan Pronto. So